Welcome to the Essence of Liberty podcast. This is the Horsemanship podcast where we discuss all things liberty to help you understand, connect, communicate, and play with your horse in a gentle, subtle, and force-free way. We'll get a bit nerdy about equine psychology and learning theory to understand the science behind it all. And we'll also dive into how to motivate your horse, ways to strengthen your relationship, solving those common problems, and how to use liberty as a way to build your horse up physically, mentally, and emotionally, all in half an hour or less. I'm Dr. Nadine Lindblom, former equine veterinarian, and I'd like to invite you to join me on this journey as a student of the horse. Hello, and welcome back to another episode. We are only a couple of days away from Halloween, so I wanted to make this episode a little bit Halloween themed and talk about the concept of despooking your horse or desensitizing your horse to different objects and kind of the mindset around that, as well as how liberty can help your horse go from a little bit spooky to feeling confident and brave and playful. And we also have a very special offer coming up for you guys in the Academy or for the Academy. So keep an eye out on your emails and on social media for that offer because it's a very good one and you may be interested in it. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. Desensitization has become a little bit of a trendy word in the horsemanship world and completely understandable because we want our horses to be desensitized, but ideally only desensitized to the things that are kind of spooky. We want them to stay very sensitive to, for example, our aids and our communication with them. We often really want them to be very responsive and very sensitive to those things, and then we want them to kind of ignore the things that are scary. Like we want them to not spook at a rabbit, or we don't want them to spook when a plastic bag, oh my gosh, when a plastic bag flies across the road, we would prefer our horses not to be sensitive and spooking towards that. So we kind of want our horses to ignore his instincts, right? And not react to those things, but then remain highly in tune and highly sensitive to the things that we do want him to respond well to, right? So that is quite the contrast, and I want to talk about that a little bit. First of all, there's a difference between being reactive and being responsive. Generally, reactive is coming from a state of fear, when you're reacting very quickly, almost without thinking, and responsive is coming from a place of feeling calm and confident and connected, and the horse is able to respond lightly. So there's a difference there between the horse being able to respond sensitively to different things versus when he's just reacting to different things. And I think in some realms of horsemanship, the reactiveness and responsiveness is confused because the reactiveness is desired. But if you look at these horses then and you watch their body language, generally there's a lot of tension associated with their reactions. So as they're reacting to the aids, and as they are maybe, being ridden, or you're watching them in groundwork or whatever it might be, there's a lot of conflict signals. There is a lot of signs that the horse is quite stressed and uncomfortable and potentially also overreacting to different aids. If you are riding your horse, for example, and you feel like you can't really, put your legs on or your horse is going to shoot off, they're overreacting to the different aids rather than responding calmly and confidently. And when they are responding calmly and confidently, you generally see this as evidence in their body language and in their signals as well, that they are displaying quite a calm and cool demeanor, but they're still quite sensitive and responsive to the different things. So it's important that we understand the difference between being reactive and responsive. And that comes from the horse's nervous system state, whether they are in a very stressed state, then they're going to be really reactive to things, or whether they are in a calm state where they are able to be very responsive. But sometimes when we get them into this very calm state, sometimes they become unresponsive because they get a little bit too sleepy or a little bit too relaxed. And then suddenly they get termed lazy or a bit dull because they're a little bit too relaxed. And you can have relaxation and you can have responsiveness. So it's about finding a balance between that. But that's sort of like a different topic. Coming back to the desensitization part, the very common way of desensitizing these reactive horses, or these horses that spook really easily to different objects, is, I suppose, like sort of the traditional ways to expose them to as many different objects as possible. And one of the ways is to kind of use pressure and release in this, in that, if you have a plastic bag, for example, you might rustle the plastic bag until the horse stands still and then take the plastic bag away. Or another common one that I've seen is if the horse is really afraid of the whip, you would move the whip and swish the whip up and down, like away, not on the horse, but you would swish and make noise with it until the horse then stands still. And then you would take it away to show the horse that, you have to stand still when you meet something that is scary. And the thing that you need to keep in mind with those methods, if perhaps it's something that you are using at the moment, is that they can have good results. But one of the things I've seen with those methods is that it can teach horses to freeze. So we have a couple of different ways of responding to threats. And the common ones, that are very well known is fight, flight, or freeze. So if the horse can't run away, then the next thing might be to get aggressive and fight, to fight for his life. But many horses, before they go to fight, some horses, several horses, they will freeze first. So if the running doesn't work, sometimes they'll just stop and they'll lock up. And a lot of people will then think of this moment as the horse accepting and relaxing, or, accepting the stimuli, and then they take the stimuli away in order to reinforce that moment. But really what you're reinforcing is the freeze response. And that can be quite dangerous, because if you teach your horse to freeze and you're misinterpreting this moment as relaxation or that the horse is okay, what can happen in the future is that your horse starts freezing in different stressful scenarios, and then you end up with an explosion that happens, quote unquote, out of nowhere. So it wasn't out of nowhere. It was a lot of built up stress and tension, and your horse is trying to deal with it through freezing because that's what he learns is effective. But at some point, eventually, there's a high risk that he will explode because he can't take it anymore, and he will revert back to flight, like running away and exploding, bolting, or fight. Some horses can come out of this freeze as aggressiveness, as with aggressive behaviors, which is not what we want. So just be careful with that type of desensitizing. And I want to share with you a little bit about how I like to approach and think about desensitizing, because it made a really big difference for me when I had this shift. Because, I came from a background of doing all those things, and I'm not trying to shame anyone who is doing those things whatsoever. We're all doing the best we can with the knowledge that we have. But I want to share with you my experience of it and my knowledge now around it, now that I have come a lot further than I was back then in my journey. And I really want to share with you what I kind of learned through that process. And I want to share with you how I now like to think about desensitizing and sort of the mindset around it. So I want to begin with a little bit of a story. Get your imagination caps on, because you can follow along in this story, and the more you sort of imagine yourself in that situation, the better this is going to kind of work. Okay, imagine that you are at home and you like being at home. Home is a very peaceful place, and it's a beautiful day outside, and you're sitting inside reading a book. You have the windows open a little bit, and there's a really nice breeze coming through. And it's just beautiful. You have that warm, fuzzy feeling inside, like you have no responsibilities, you got nothing going on, you just have a day to yourself to relax. Your partner, if you have a partner, is at home as well. And perhaps you have a dog, and the dog is lying peacefully next to you while you're reading one of your favorite books. You're just really enjoying this day. You feel really grounded. You feel really peaceful. It's great. Then the wind picks up a little bit, and you have a picture frame. You have picture frames on the wall. What happens sometimes when the breeze picks up is that it blows a particular one of these picture frames off the wall. It happens quite repeatedly. You're sitting there in your chair and the wind picks up and it blows this picture frame off the wall. And you sort of look up and you're just like, oh gosh, like I should really secure that better, right? But it doesn't really, it doesn't bother you very much. You go and you pop it back up, or, you put it to the side knowing that, it might get blown over again. But the point is there that, like it didn't really affect you, right? Later that day, at night, your partner, he or she does night shifts, so they're away, right? So you're home alone with your dog, and you've been watching TV, and you've been watching a movie that's, a little bit scary, right? Like a little bit of a thriller movie, because you're a daredevil and you like those types of movies. I will never understand it personally, but you're one of those people that like thriller movies to get the heart rate going a little bit. So you just watched one of those movies and it's kind of, it was a little bit unsettling. And you decide, okay, well, it's probably time to go to bed. And you turn the TV off and you kind of sit there on your phone on a little bit. Maybe you're scrolling through social media. And then you hear a noise outside. It sounds like a person. And you can hear this person coming up to your front door and trying to open the door, like kind of like a little bit gently, like a little bit quietly, but you can definitely hear that someone is out there. And your dog looks up as well and kind of growls a little bit, and the hairs on the back of his neck stands up. So your dog is really alert on this and like sensing that someone is out there. You sit there really quietly and you think, oh my God, there's someone trying to get into the house. You don't really know what to do initially. You're just sort of listening for sounds because the sound sort of disappears, and you're trying to listen for any more sounds or, what could be going on. And you're trying to decide, do I go and hide in the bathroom? Do I try to run out, maybe the back door? Do I just hide or just sit here really quietly? And you're listening to the noises, and you suddenly hear that this person is walking around the house. But the sound then disappears. So you hear that there's this person, there's like, you have some bushes near the windows and everything, but the sound kind of comes and goes, like someone is sort of like sneaking around a little bit. Suddenly, the wind comes and blows that picture frame off the wall. What do you think your reaction would be? You're sitting here quietly, like really listening for that sounds, that feeling when you're very aware that you're alone and kind of helpless. If someone was to try to break in, it would be a really, really scary feeling. And the wind picks up and blows that picture frame off the wall. That would probably frighten you quite significantly, because that picture frame is right near you too. Like it's quite close. It basically scares the daylights out of you. And suddenly your phone rings and you see that it's your partner that's calling. And it's a sigh of relief. And you're like, oh my gosh, okay. And you kind of like answer it sort of quietly. He or she is out there and they're like, I'm so sorry. Like I forgot my keys and I thought you were asleep, but it sounds like you're awake. So can you let me in? So it was actually your partner just trying to come in, but not wake you up, because they needed to come back and maybe they forgot something or had to come grab something, but they didn't want to wake you up in case you were asleep on the couch or something like that. So they had gone around, tested the back door was locked as well, and in the process really, really scared you. So that story is an example of how your horse feels sometimes, because the picture frame that fell off the wall and scared the living daylights out of you was not a threat to you, but you reacted really strongly because of the state that your nervous system was in at the time. And it's quite common that we talk about horses. You might be leading your horse somewhere and you've gone past a certain thing a bajillion times. And suddenly one day he spooks at it and you're like, oh my gosh, you've seen this thing a million times. Why today are you spooking at it? And more often than not, sometimes it's because the thing changed, and they're also very sensitive to things that change when things are the same every day. But more often than not, it's because of the state that your horse's nervous system is at the time. So you may also be able to relate to a situation where your horse is in a really calm state. Your horse is in a really, really peaceful, grounded state, and nothing seems to faze him. He just has like a really good day, and he's just really confident, and nothing is bothering him. And then another day, he might be off his chops completely and spooking at everything, reacting at everything. He's got separation anxiety. He's just really on edge, and he's startling at everything, and he's spooking, and he's just not handling life very well. And it feels strange sometimes because you're like, well, yesterday you were fine, and today you're acting like you've never seen any of these things before at all. Like, what is going on? And a lot of the time, it is simply because of the state that their nervous system is in. And you might be able to also relate to feeling like when you feel really peaceful and grounded, not much will bother you very easily. Like, things can happen around you, and you might be like, oh, okay, that's just how it goes today. That's, that was interesting. Whereas if you are in a really stressed state and you are really anxious, or maybe you've been in a chronically stressed state, maybe your nervous system is dysregulated where you're stuck in a stressed state, you can overreact, quote unquote overreact. I mean, like, react more than what would be sort of considered appropriate for the thing. And almost like have a breakdown because a little thing happened, whereas it wasn't really a big thing. But sometimes it's an accumulation of different things, and it's kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back, and then suddenly you have this massive reaction. But the moral of the story is that when your nervous system is up, whether dysregulated or not, you're going to be really reactive to different things. So when it comes to desensitizing, I really like to think, instead of thinking about the different objects that we are desensitizing the horses to, like if you are desensitizing your horse to a plastic bag, it's very common that it becomes about the plastic bag. But what I encourage you to do, what I encourage you to think about when you're using like a plastic bag or a tarp or something on the ground, is think more in terms of your horse's ability to regulate his emotions and to move from a stress state down to a more calm and relaxed state. Because the more your horse is able to move from a stressed state back down into a relaxed state, in a controlled environment, when you're training and desensitizing him to these things, the more easily he's going to be able to do that in a uncontrolled environment. So when you're desensitizing, if you're working with the plastic bags and that, then focus more on your horse's ability to go to a little bit of a stress state. So you might bring out the tarp or bring out the thing that scares him a little bit, because that will, in a controlled way, cause him to become a little bit stressed, and then you can help him come back down into a relaxed state. So it's more about working on him being able to come up a little bit and down a little bit and up a little bit and down a little bit. Because then when you're out on a trail ride and your horse gets spooked from something, he's going to be much more equipped to be able to take that tension and let it go, because it's something that you've practiced in a more controlled environment. It's almost like building a muscle. So the more you do this in a controlled environment and use the different objects to help your horse come up and go down and come up and go down, the more skilled your horse will become at coming back down when he gets stressed in an uncontrolled environment. And that is the key. That is the skill. I don't think it's completely possible to, eliminate the chances of spooking absolutely completely. I mean, they can be in a very calm and confident state, and they can be very exposed to different things so that it doesn't necessarily faze them. But sometimes a horse is going to spook just because a horse is a horse. And when that happens, it's very good that your horse can go from a spook and then, let it go, because he's practiced that before. Some horses, and you may be able to relate to this, that your horse gets spooked and then it's like he can't come back down. So then he's just tense, and it's just impossible for him to relax again because he's not used to flowing through those states really easily. So sometimes it's all it takes is one scare, and then your horse is just super tense for a long period of time, not able to let it go. So it is the important part for this, I mean, exposure to lots of different objects is excellent, and being able to move through the different states is excellent. So that's kind of what I want to highlight there in terms of desensitizing and how to think about it and what to be careful of when it comes to desensitizing. Now I want to talk about a little bit where liberty comes into this, because liberty can be fantastic in helping horses build confidence. So sometimes, like we talked about with the freeze response in the beginning of the episode, some horses learn to freeze and flooded horses learn to shut down, or they don't learn to shut down, but they just end up shutting down. And flooding is basically when the horse is exposed to a particular scary stimulus, and this stimulus is continuing to bother him in some way. So think about people that tie tarps to the horse or milk bottles and like all these different things, and the horse has, he can run and he can run and he can run and he can bolt and he can try to get all this stuff, get away from all this stuff, but nothing is going to work until he eventually just kind of accepts it and gives up. So that is flooding. The horse is way over threshold, and eventually he learns that he is helpless and he can dissociate and shut down. And that can happen with different attempts of desensitizing. And where liberty comes into this is that it shows them that they have control again. They have control over something. They're very safe. They can leave, they can come back, and they feel like they're in this state where they're causing different things to happen, that their behavior is causing them to get a reward. And that feeling of control helps wake them up out of this frozen, shut down state, which is an incredible transformation to witness, because these shut down horses usually lack a personality. They lack wanting to engage with people. Sometimes they lack engagement with other horses. Sometimes they isolate themselves. Sometimes they, they just have this glazed over look in their eyes, like there's no one home, like the lights are on, but no one's home. And liberty can then help these horses that feel like they've lost control regain their control. So it can help them really build that confidence again. They can become really feel really safe, and that's where you start to unlock this beautiful expressiveness and that playfulness, and they become able to socially engage again, which means that they are open to connection with you, and it's really, really beautiful to see. The reactive horses, the horses that are not quite stuck in a shut down state, but they're hyper reactive to everything and very prone to getting really spooky, they benefit a lot from the positive reinforcement work and the liberty work, because it gives them a point of focus. It's a very positive experience for them. You can work on a lot of relaxation techniques and get them into like a really calm and connected state. Focus is a really important part of a horse being able to calm down. So using positive reinforcement gives them a positive aspect to focus on. And that can, one, just help them relax in the beginning. And then also because they are working, kind of feeling like they're in control of the training session, that they have a lot of choice, they also build their confidence and they can become very expressive and playful and learn to be calm and connected and responsive rather than being reactive. I mean, honestly, this is such a deep topic. It is, much more than a half an hour episode. But I really wanted to dive into that a little bit for this episode, for this Halloween spooky episode. And I hope it helped give you a little bit of food for thought about desensitization and how you can approach this idea of sort of despooking your horse through a lens of understanding the nervous system and understanding how your horse is experiencing different situations, and also how you can incorporate liberty work and positive reinforcement to sort of help your horse build that confidence, wake up. If you have a shut down horse, wake them up, empower them again, and unleash that beautiful, expressive little being that is hiding on the inside. So I'm going to leave you with those thoughts. And yeah, stay tuned for this offer that we have coming up for Halloween. It's very, very exciting. It's going to be released in just a couple of days, and I can't wait to share it with you. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next episode.